Hi guys, I'm Philip J. Watt and this is the Redesigning Society series. Today we have Dr. Amit Goswami joining us, and if you're not familiar with Dr. Goswami's work, he has written many books and appeared in specific documentaries, including where I first saw him in What the Bleep Do We Know? And he is a quantum theorist or quantum activist, and basically has the agenda or aim to bridge the gap between science and spirituality, which is such a necessary and relevant topic at the start of the 21st century. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Goswami.
Thank you, Phil, for inviting me.
My pleasure. As I mentioned, I first came across your work in What the Bleep Do You Know? But I have read several books since then, including The Self-Aware Universe and Physics from the Soul, I think it was, from memory. But I really connect with a lot of what your work is about. Now, I know your latest book, Quantum Economics, Unleashing the Power and Economics of Consciousness, is probably very relevant in our day and age with this global economic sort of dysfunction that's going on. So do you want to elaborate first on your latest book?
Yeah, this would be a very good topic to discuss because, as you said, we need real fast action on how the economy is running. Capitalism, the way it is running, seems like its days are very numbered.
Yes, it does. It's not just the way capitalism has turned into crony capitalism, but it's also the Ponzi schemes and the gambling basically on Wall Street that is putting a lot of pressure and risk into the system.
And don't forget business ethics. This week, the Volkswagen company, which is a very respectable, used to be very respectable car manufacturer, and Americans have a lot of affection for those Volkswagen Beetles first and now Volkswagen Rabbit and so forth. But they have been caught in a major scandal. They were cheating on the emission standards by creating a software which doesn't show enough, doesn't show too much emission when it is idling, and that's when the tests are made. But as soon as it goes to movement, the emissions are, of course, beyond the regulations, much beyond the regulations. So they were really openly cheating and openly caught. And now, that is the standard of ethics. Who knows how many other car manufacturers are getting away with similar fraud. So the ethics situation is as desperate as situation with chronism and situation with resources going out, or situation with global warming, that the pollution from the production of electricity and transportation produces. Everything is out of control. And of course, you mentioned financial banking.
Yes, well, we know the banking system is a privately owned system that is out for the benefit and perpetuation or maintenance of power for themselves. So this is, it's very relevant. It's something that I follow a lot of, and I've actually done some interviews around economics for this project. Now, when I was at uni, I remember doing a philosophy of business or business ethics class or subject, and at that stage they were saying that there's been a lot of positive change in the field of business ethics, but since the last decade or so it really has seemed to have gone backwards, and the corruption and fraud and all these sorts of schemes, get rich quick schemes that are happening in the financing, banking and business sectors has seemed to have exploded. So what is your, I guess, model in quantum economics? How are you suggesting that we transform this dysfunction in the system?
Well, this dysfunction is worldview based. I mean, the worldview, when capitalism was first founded, when Adam Smith wrote his revolutionary book, the worldview was modernism, which accepted both matter and mind. And mind was the territory of religion. So religious ethics was still very important, and businesses in the main kept to ethics, although there were violations in little things, especially treatment of humans, the labor force. But as far as the goods were concerned, there were no major fraud involved, and that has been always a strength of capitalism. For example, the communist system, bureaucracy very quickly delays fraud entered the system because there is no reliance on ethics at all. They, from the get-go, has been based on scientific materialism. But capitalism was not that way. But then scientific materialism, this idea that matter is everything, ethics doesn't exist, enter, and then we try to control ethics through regulations, and that has limits, and then this is what is showing up everywhere. Of course, the whole idea that matter is everything also limits us in terms of how much market is there, how much production is possible realistically. And of course, according to scientific materialism, creativity and innovation, which are part of capitalism in order to get us out of recession, has always been traditionally, but innovation and creativity don't exist under scientific materialism. So that too has caused a major shift in terms of how people think about themselves. And so we get more of these generations and generations of the same thing rather than truly new innovations for new arenas of business activity. So all this has to be changed. And the recipe is quite simple, because when you take the quantum worldview, you very quickly find that you can incorporate all our experiences in the economic arena, not only the material experience, but also the mental, the vital energy that we feel, and even the archetypal values that we try to follow, which include ethics. So the idea is simply that we bring the subtle energies, vital, mental, and archetypal, like love, into the arena of economic activity. This will do two things. First of all, it will give us new products to deploy and investigate and research and be creative about. But second of all, this will do a fantastic thing in terms of the goods themselves that we produce will start both at the end of production and at the end of consumption, at both ends. Both the producer and consumer will transform in the process of production and consumption itself. So ethics and stuff like that will be built in this system, not left to regulations, but innately people will, by simply producing and consuming these subtle energy goods, they will change. It will be a little gradual. So in the meantime, until the quantum economics is established, we may have to have some regulations, but eventually it will become like it was under modernism. People will become ethical because they know that that's the right way to go.
This is something that I've written extensively about, how scientific materialism, which is a philosophy, it's a metaphysics on life, really, and it is hardened into a dogma, and that dogma now permeates the way that evidence is interpreted within the scientific disciplines. Yeah.
So as soon as scientific materialism is replaced by the quantum worldview, we will completely revision the economic arena and the business arena, and I think the power of capitalism will be unleashed once again. Actually, what has happened, basically, I feel that capitalism was not complete under Adam Smith's formulation anyhow, because the time was not ready. Adam Smith emphasized selfishness in both production and consumption, and that was the right thing to do for the material arena. And of course, that worked. but social good was left out entirely, and that, of course, was the weakness. It became very clear during the Great Depression in the 30s, and recently, of course, again, the 2007-2008 recession, Great Recession that took place, that without social good, we really would be in bad shape. Fortunately, in almost all the developed countries, at least, we now have some safety net in place, and so people did not really suffer all that much during this Great Recession as much as they suffered in the Depression times. But still, the point is that the recession, this periodic recession, there is just no remedy for it in scientific materialism, apart from the fact that we are running out of resources anyway. Whereas what happens then is that the tremendous amount of capital is available to the rich people to invest, but there is nothing to invest because there is no new innovations, no creative products are coming forth in the material arena. So where would the money go? I mean, they don't give the administration, they don't feel comfortable with it. So what they do is this financial banking is an invention of what to do with that money. Basically, they're gambling with it, and so that has again wreaked havoc with the economy. So all these things can be solved simply by recognizing that Adam Smith's economics was incomplete. We can and must introduce our subtle goods in the economic arena. As Abraham Maslow said, when our basic needs, survival needs are satisfied, people hunger for higher needs. So people are ready right now, in the advanced economies at least. People are ready for products like a perfume which not only will smell good, but will make you feel romantic. Diet food that not only gives you the basic nutrition in terms of adequate amount of protein, carbohydrate, and fat, but also gives you the vital energy that you need to really feel that you've got proper nutrition. Water, quench your thirst properly. Right now, I mean, it's a shame that we have to drink bottled water to really quench our thirst in almost all parts of the world. So this kind of thing obviously requires a revitalization of many of the things that we eat and drink. In fact, even the workplace, because of too much emphasis on information, people are just not into meaning and values which keep their vital energy intact. You know, everybody has become kind of vital energy deprived. So what happens in the workplace itself, you see, if you are sensitive enough, that you're not feeling so good. You're not really feeling vitalized, you know, that energy that keeps you creative, productive. That is just not there in most workplaces. In fact, the opposite. People become negative, more infested with all these negative emotions that are built into our brain. And there is nothing they can learn in today's very materialistic oriented education to build positive emotional brain circuit in the brain to compensate the negative. So the workplaces are full of negativity, and that reduces obviously productivity. So if we learn, and the technology is already there, how to vitalize these places, it will be a tremendous impact on increasing productivity in businesses. And it's time that people wake up to the quantum worldview. All these benefits, they're just begging us to deploy the necessities of the worldview.
Yes, I think we've got the technology. We could automate so many jobs. We could essentially, we've got that will, that strength, that resource. We're resourceful enough to provide all the basic needs for all of humanity pretty easily. Now, you did mention subtle energy or vital energy, and I'm assuming you meant prana or chi energy. So I guess my question is, how does that fit into the quantum theory and quantum physics? Which interpretation is accounts for subtle energy, and what evidence is there to support that notion?
Yes, this is the most important part, of course, because we cannot develop a technology unless it is based on solid science, and it is. It is. Quantum physics from the get-go has told us that objects are, even material objects are, waves of possibility. Very subtle. A subtlety has been introduced in the very makeup of objects. They're not like what we thought. They're not concrete objects until consciousness looks at it. This is the idea of quantum physics that makes only idea of quantum physics that makes sense if you want to free quantum physics of paradoxes. Every other idea gives you one form of paradox or another. There is no way of making a paradox-free analysis of quantum physics without introducing the idea that objects are waves of possibility for consciousness to choose from. Now, even before we bring consciousness in, everybody agrees in view of the data, this is just data, experimental data, that the possibility waves reside in a separate domain of reality, outside of space and time. How is the domain defined? This domain is defined by instant communication, signal-less communication. Communication with signals is the way that communication occurs in space and time, and taking a finite time. A signal goes through space a little bit at a time, always taking a finite time. But in the domain outside of space and time, this domain that I call consciousness, in that domain, communication is instantaneous because everything is already connected. This connection is called non-locality. This signal-less communication in quantum physics we call non-locality. And this is a very important concept because this concept can be verified. And this is what is revolutionizing. The experiments that you mentioned, which negated scientific materialism completely, the whole philosophy, is this non-locality experiment that first was done in 1982 by a French physicist group led by Alain Aspect. But now there are just so much data available, both at the micro level and the macro level, that we can talk about it all day, and still there will be more. So there is just no doubt in anybody's mind. There should be no doubt in anybody's mind, except, of course, people who have vested interest in scientific materialism. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that way, that non-locality is truth. If non-locality is truth, then there exists another domain of reality outside of space and time. And analysis very easily shows that that domain is consciousness, because what else can be interconnected? What else can give you the knowledge, change in knowledge, as Heisenberg himself recognized when he founded quantum physics, that quantum measurement is nothing but a change in knowledge. Change in knowledge from vague knowledge, only probability and possibility, to exact knowledge when we actually measure where the object will show up. So this change in knowledge is the basic thing that happens from the interaction of this domain outside of space and time with the domain of space and time. So what should we call the vehicle with which we gather knowledge? If you look at etymology, even in ancient time, we knew that consciousness is that vehicle. Consciousness has two words in its etymology, kam, which means with, and skire, which means to know. So consciousness is a vehicle to know with. And precisely that is what is going on in a quantum measurement. And therefore, this etymology itself leaves no doubt that it has to be consciousness. But look, the whole argument will take probably 15 minutes, which I don't think we should spend on quantum physics. But The argument is quite simple, is what I'm trying to emphasize. All my books contain these arguments so that people can have an instant recognition that yes, this is the way it is. And so this is the situation. There is theory, very good theory, and there is also experimental data, very good data available for supporting the theory.
Scientists spent a couple of centuries trying to disregard or reject mind from the theories of reality, but it just keeps on coming back, and it's coming back stronger than ever. And it does take time for the generations, the generations of professionals within the scientific sort of disciplines to come around. So are you seeing more changes, more people sort of aligning to this worldview?
Well, yes, some changes have taken place. Initially when I started back in the 90s with my book Self-Aware Universe and a few scientific papers, the strategy that the scientific establishment had towards my work and work of similar ilk was benign neglect. And they did succeed in keeping our work from getting any limelight for some time. But I guess intelligent people are a bit individualistic and good for them. So eventually some people in the community started getting interested in the consciousness resolution. And there is now renewed respect. I went to a conference a couple of years ago in Paris where we met only three of us, the new paradigm scientists, but some 8 or 9 of the quote-unquote opposition group of believers in scientific materialism. But we met with a deep respect for each other, obviously. We recognize they're intelligent people and their skepticism is to be overcome and taken with respect and treated with respect. And similarly, they recognize that they need to listen to us. So the effect was very strikingly supportive. They admitted openly that yes, the interpretation based on consciousness makes sense. They are just not sure that it is the only answer to the paradoxes of quantum physics, and therefore they held up their support for a little longer, they said. But the tone of the meeting was clear, that there is now to be recognized that this is the only paradox-free interpretation that's available. And so the choice is between, do we go with it and look at the consequences of this new worldview, which is just astounding how much integration it can achieve. It can integrate science and spirituality, as you mentioned. It can integrate the alternative psychologies with the mainstream cognitive behavioral psychology. It can integrate alternative medicine with the mainstream allopathic medicine. It really gives us, as we are discussing, new ways to do economics, rescue capitalism. I'm writing a book on how it can rescue democracy and rescue education. So the impact of this new worldview will be just enormous. Only comparable thing in history is the Copernican worldview change that occurred 400 years ago.
Yes. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that interpretation is called? I know that you've designed a philosophy called monistic idealism, meaning one mind. So could you elaborate on that as well as the interpretation of quantum theory that you're referring to?
Okay, let's go through the paradox a little bit. It's only 5 minutes really that it takes. The materialist view of our consciousness is this. Materialist view of our consciousness is that it's a brain phenomenon, and brain looking at an object is a measurement. Brain looks at an object, usually with the help of an apparatus that is called a measuring apparatus. Like if we want to measure an electron, we measure it with a Geiger counter. Now, I already said electron is a wave of possibility. So if we release an electron, these waves expand, and electrons very soon is supposed to be all over a room, for example. So we put a room full of Geiger counter to see where the electron is, or if it is really all over the room, as quantum physics is predicting. But then the problem shows up immediately. Quantum physics predicts electron is all over the room, but the electron shows up in only one Geiger counter. This is the quantum measurement problem. How does the wave of possibility that quantum physics predicts becomes a particle of actuality when we measure? So let's see how that measurement can take place. Now, the problem is this, that really we don't have an electron. What we have is a possible electron. That's what quantum physics is saying. So possible electrons make possible molecules, make possible atoms, make possible molecules, make a possible neuron, make possible brain. And then this possible brain looks at a possible Geiger counter, looks at a possible electron, and you see we're coupling possibility with possibility with possibility, and that will never, never, never get you actuality. In fact, John von Neumann, great mathematician, he proved it mathematically, a theorem of quantum physics, that if quantum physics is correct, if you stay within quantum physics, there is no way within quantum physics that material interactions can ever convert a possibility wave into actuality. So this is the paradox, quantum measurement paradox. It is absolutely fundamentally built into quantum physics. You cannot solve quantum measurement problem if you are assuming material interactions alone. So there got to be some non-material interaction. So I told you before that there is this domain of reality outside space and time. So that domain must be exerting a non-material interaction. This is the obvious idea. Now, if this non-material interaction is exerted by a domain outside, our natural inclination would be to declare, oh, that is dualism. We are saying there are dual reality. One reality is space-time reality, and the other reality is this domain of potentiality. But how do they interact? And this is where that concept of non-locality comes in, because scientists always say that, well, all interactions must be with signals. But that's true only of material interactions. But non-material interaction, obviously, in view of the discovery of non-locality, is non-local. This domain, everything is connected, already connected. And so that connection, this non-local connection, is, if you name it consciousness, then everything falls together. What do we have, the observer has, that the brain doesn't have? The observer has consciousness in addition to the material brain. So if we think of the brain as something that is a conduit for consciousness, then what follows is that when we look at the electrons measurement with a Geiger counter, our looking is not only changing the electron's possibility into the particle that electron reveals itself as at the Geiger counter with a tick, but also we are measuring the brain, and the brain becomes an identification for consciousness. So we find that we identify with the brain and look at the electron as an object, and we become the subject of the experience. So in one shot, we have solved not only the problem of quantum measurement, but also the paradox of perception itself. How does consciousness fit into a subject looking at an object? This problem also cannot be solved from scientific materialism, because scientific materialism only has objects. Object making up objects, making up objects. Objects can never make up a subject, qualitatively different. So consciousness collapsing quantum waves of possibility into actual events of experience, this idea can now become fundamental. And if you have collapsing the material experience, once that idea gets into our worldview, then it is easy to see why not other experiences as well. Why not mental experience? Why not the experience of feeling? Why not the experience of intuition? So we now recognize that there are 4 kinds of possibilities, not just one material kind, but there is also vital energy kind, mental kind, meaning, and the supramental or archetypal kind, which we intuit. 4 different kinds of experience: sensing, material, feeling, vital energy, thinking, meaning, and intuition, archetypes. So 4 different kinds of possibilities, 4 different kinds of measurement, 4 different kinds of experiences.
You can already see the type of impact that could have on our value systems, on how we interact with each other and also our environment as well. Now, the book, God is Not Dead, in the book, God is Not Dead, you demonstrated that science and religion, or science and spirituality, is compatible. It's about this bridging the gap between this inner realm and this outer realm. And you claim that quantum physics proves the existence of God. So I just thought I'd ask you what you mean by God. What is your definition of God that quantum physics proves?
Well, you can think of God as this consciousness, this outside of space-time interconnected domain of non-locality. You can call that God. That is one way of thinking it. But I prefer to think God in a slightly different way. This domain exerts a force, exerts a wish, exerts a choice. It chooses from the possibility with the actuality. That choice, we call it a downward causation, and God should be thought of as the agent of downward causation. That's the best way to think of God. The agent of downward causation, agent of this force. And the domain of potentiality or consciousness, that spiritual traditions have a beautiful name for it, the Christian tradition. It's called Godhead. Hindus call it Brahman. That's a slightly different connotation, an entirely new concept. But God and Godhead, if we separate that, I think that's a subtle point, but it's an important point. So when we think of this way, what happens then is very important. We conventionally, in a popular way, I think most people think of God as a person. As soon as you think that God is just an agency so that an interaction can occur between this domain of consciousness and the domain of space-time where we live, then that personification of God, that should disappear from our thinking. And that is important. Because, when we think of God as a person, we think of favoritism, and every religion thinks that they are the favorite, and therefore other religions should be persecuted, and people should leave other religions and come to their religion. Look at the religious battles that we have fought throughout human history. All that becomes useless and obviously nonsense, because all religions are based on the same basic God. It's just an agency of a force, nothing to do with a person. It's objective, and it's there. It's available to us if we know how to access it, and some of us do, some of us don't. But with quantum physics to guide us, all of us can learn to access it, and then we take responsibility for it too. In the religions, there is a tremendous amount of shifting responsibility to God. But now we recognize that no, God is our deeper level of consciousness. It's our unconscious, really. And so we start taking responsibility for how we access or not access our deeper levels of consciousness.
So God is an agency of creation, and that the God and then the Godhead, that's the expression through the collective consciousness or the consciousness of reality. You can see how that, as you mentioned, can apply to all religious traditions, all spiritual sort of systems, and can also incorporate the scientific or rational sort of approach to life as well. So here we have a universal metaphysics that could appease everybody's own cultural dialogue around what the fundamental reality that we experience is. So that's beautiful.
Thank you. So basically, the situation stands where we have a very satisfying, beautiful understanding of both the religious worldview and the scientific worldview, and both are properly respected. Science gets its share. Scientific material interactions produce the possibilities for consciousness to choose from. And so science, the conventional science is in equal footing with the spiritual aspect of things, where the spirit is the agency for ultimately choosing among the possibilities that immanent interactions create. So, in religion we say transcendent and immanent, and so both transcendent and immanent are valued. The one thing that religions did in the olden days is that they sure neglected the immanent, because they thought that transcendent is the real ultimate reality, and therefore the immanent is illusory. Now we know better, because the immanent is maybe appearance, moment to moment, momentary, but it's certainly not illusory. It certainly has order. Science applies to it, and we can control it, and we can certainly be creative about what is its use, and we now know what its use is. Its use is to make representation of the subtle aspects of consciousness. So matter has to be used to make representations of vital energy. Economic goods like vitalized water we're talking about, they're all representations. We ourselves are representations of consciousness. Our brain makes representations of mental meaning. We have even the capacity of making representations of supramental archetype through the intermediary of our mind and our vital energy, and that is what, of course, we call love. These momentary representations, momentary experiences can be made into more changes in the organs themselves. And then we have the heart chakra, then we have a love circuit in the brain, and we learn to love that way in a much more unconditional way than just romantic love. So in this way, the new science is telling us the secrets of how to love, how to respect each other, how to be ethical, how to be good. In fact, how to investigate the archetypes themselves, because it is giving us a very good science of creativity. And so creativity in businesses and in economics will come back. And that's a major, major news, because it's creativity that it takes to get out of recession. Otherwise, we'll have forever this recession inflation dynamic, which will never quit. But if we start using subtle energy, I have been able to show in my book, Quantum Economics, that these fluctuations will be much less already, because subtle energy is unlimited. That takes away a major defect of the material domain, which is a limited domain. Material resources are limited, but all the subtle energy domains, they're unlimited, they're infinite. So there you have it. We don't even need, at some stage of our development, we'll recognize that we don't need to make subtle money, those things that give us trouble, the derivatives, even the concept of stocks, etc., will gradually, I think, go away. At least the idea of making money with them will go away. Because if you like the subtle, infinite dimensions of experience to invest your money, you have the subtle energy to invest. That is unlimited, and you can invest all the money you got, no limit. So right now, a lot of money sits stationary and people don't like it, and therefore they gamble with it. With subtle energy in the economic equation, they will have always something to invest. There is no end to what you can invest in the subtle dimensions. And most importantly, people start investing in the human being. And, I have this concept of human capital. I have this dream that where human beings themselves will be so transformed that they become objects of the economy. I tell a story about my experience with a with a sage in India named Laughing Baba. My wife and I were traveling the Ganges, taking a walk, and suddenly a door opens and somebody says, "Come inside. Laughing Baba is giving a discourse." And so we became curious. The word laughing attracted our attention. Baba just means a religious figure, like father. So we went, and the Baba was speaking in the language of Hindi, which I don't understand. So my attention went away, and I was looking around, and then I found a strange thing. Everybody had a smile on their face. It's an amazing thing. I found myself to be also smiling, and I didn't know why. And then I realized this is why this fellow is called Laughing Baba, because in his presence, everybody becomes happy and starts smiling. So, you know, if somebody's presence produces happiness, that's a product of the economy that can be sold. I mean, imagine the impact of, I was talking about workplaces, how they don't have vitality. Imagine the impact of putting somebody like Laughing Baba in a workplace like that. Immediately the energy of the workplace would become happy. So there is enormous scope here for innovative thinking, for new products, and that changes us, that changes our economy, and that enhances civilization.
There's several different social system models that has really garnered a lot of attention over recent years in response to this mess that we are in on a global scale, and how we do choose to economize and structure our society. One is the resource-based economy, which has got a couple of different variations, one by Jacques Fresco with the Venus Project, another by Peter Joseph with the Zeitgeist movement, and there's Michael Tellingen's work with Ubuntu as well. So all these social systems are designed to remove the need for money, and also provide all of the, utilize the technologies available to automate society the best as possible, and free up humanity to explore their creativity and their passion, and to really thrive. So do you have a model within your book that sort of aligns or is synonymous with these sorts of social structures that are starting to emerge these days?
Well, the social structure of democracy works the best with capitalism. As you know, capitalism, democracy, and liberal education were created together under the aegis of the modernistic worldview, modernism. Now, this quantum worldview we can think of as an integrated modernism, integrative modernism. Original modernism was based on dualistic idea, God separate from the world. Now we find that no, God is the world. God is not separate from the world. God is the world. God divides itself. Quantum consciousness divides itself into subject and object and becomes separate only in our experience. But implicitly, we are always potentially one. So it is this kind of idea that produced capitalism in the origin, because, as I said, social good could be brought about from the religious side of things, and the individual good could be brought about by the material side of things. That was Adam Smith's idea. And now we are again really put that into a scientific worldview, that yes, it is indeed this way. We are always connected, and therefore we should always look after each other cooperatively with social good in mind, just as we take care of our individual good. At the same time, there's no harm in being competitive when we have to survive, but beyond survival, there is always this extra needs to satisfy, mental meaning and spiritual love. We should not lose sight of them either. As soon as our survival needs are satisfied, we should immediately start looking for how to help another, how to be loving, how to make the world more beautiful.
There is certainly a huge, I guess, capacity for self-worth and giving back to others. It's, I think if everybody adopts that philosophy, then they'll be feeling a lot happier and a lot more content within their own lives as well. Now, you mentioned before that some people can access this subtle energy, this God or Godhead. And my first thoughts are around meditation. I've been meditating for over a decade, and it seems as a pretty good tool to access different aspects of consciousness. So is that what you were referring to when you're talking about accessing it? Because we are literally made of this stuff. So how do we access those parts of ourselves?
Well, different people have access, and they go by different names. Like psychics have a kind of access to non-locality. They can really access the domain of non-locality and perform their psychism, like telepathy and that kind of thing. So that's one kind of access that we have. A lot of people are good at it. Other people have their access with creativity that they use then to produce a product like a book, novel, scientific idea, music, art. All this then is another kind of access. And then we have mystics, spiritual people who have access to goodness, access to love. And again, these are also access to the same non-local domain, the same Godhead, quantum consciousness possibilities. What quantum physics shows is that all three of the axes really have something in common. It is really the creative process that is being used in the accessing. And the key to the creative process also we have discovered first through empiricism, empirical data, and next through quantum physics. The process of creativity crucially depends on not only work, do, the process of finding out solutions in our conscious state, but also let the unconscious work for us when we just relax. We do nothing in the conscious, but the unconscious then processes the possibilities we generate through conscious work, and unconscious produces much more magical solutions, much more appropriate solutions, because the unconscious is the whole consciousness. Unconscious is Godhead itself. Unconscious is all that is. And obviously the unconscious power of observation of the unconscious, power of processing of the unconscious far exceeds the power that we have in our conscious mind when we are quite individual and separate. So although an individual can increase the repertoire of knowledge and therefore process things better in conscious awareness, but still the power of the unconscious is just enormous. And so creativity is really releasing, learn to access and release and trust the power of the unconscious. So in creativity we find that there is do and then there is be, doing nothing. So this do be alternative, do be, do. That is the process of creativity. Then comes insight. In the insight we get the idea that we'll have to install, that we have to make it into a product. That product could be an outer product, like we develop psychic abilities. The product can, that is not an outer product. Outer product is something like an piece of art or piece of science that I develop, or it could be an inner product. I become a psychic, or I become a mystic, I become a spiritual person. So the same creative process then is explaining all of the accesses that we have had in humankind if you look at people. And now all can be taught. We can teach the creative process to kids. Notice that under scientific materialism, people are being taught to go in the opposite direction. Today's kids, they're information junkies. They're always working, do all the computer, and they're producing health problem in that way. It's a huge problem now for doctors to handle. people who work on the computer without even walking for very long periods of time, just sitting there watching their computer screen. So this kind of thing, just do-oriented culture, has produced a very non-creative kind of kids of today, and this is why innovation is so rare today. But if we bring in that relaxed society of the old, where do is the way to go, not do, and then we access creativity better, we access the non-local domain of reality, we access the unconscious, and creativity flourishes. In the process, we have learned to really access the domain from where we choose, so we can better manifest what we want to manifest.
In previous interviews, I spoke with Dean Radin and Rupert Sheldrake, who are pretty well-known parapsychologists, and they've shown scientifically, and in a sort of data set sort of fashion, or within the laboratory, that we're all capable of accessing this non-locality and our minds connecting with the with external physical systems. In very subtle ways, but certainly in a real consistent way. So if we adopt or incorporate that sort of new knowledge into our new philosophies, ones that incorporate mind, and teach that to our new generations, our kids coming up, then we can design our neurology, we can design the concepts in our minds in a way that can amplify this sort of capacity that lays really dormant within us, doesn't it?
Yes. And indeed, all these works, all these scientists are working together. The quantum ideas fit in very well with Rupert Sheldrake's ideas. And so, we really are together, all these scientists together, developing a new paradigm, and it's a human science now. That scientific materialism really treats human beings as machines. And what we have done is gone a long ways towards developing a machine society. Machines can only process information. Look at today's kids. They look at everything as information. But of course, things are changing a little bit. I was very heartened. A news article said, yesterday's newspaper, that indeed books are making a comeback. So that's a little bit of change, but it's significant. Books are very important because books coming back means that people are looking at information as a way of finding meaning, not information for information's sake, which is what happens when we look at machines like a computer and its screen to read something, because we are always rushing. We just get the basic info and that's it, because we don't want to look at the screen for very long. Our eyes are not made like that. But with printed lines, we can look and we can think at the same time. And that thinking is about picking up meaning. And so this is good news. And I think more and more we're going to go back to human relationships once again. Instead of replacing love by sex, we'll concentrate on love once again. Instead of making ethics go away and saying that goodness, all these things are humbug, we'll recognize that no, we are all interconnected. We have to be good to each other. And, these changes in society, it's about time that they will come back, because one cannot live this way that we are living now. And this is why there is so many things that are breaking down.
Yes, I think a lack of inner peace is quite pandemic in our so-called modern civilized societies, developed societies, and that to me isn't that developed at all. I think we need new ways of interacting with each other, our environment, and as you said, in a meaningful, a quality way where we actually explore so much more of ourselves instead of being that robotic mechanism that keeps an economy going in a sense. So yeah, it's just I think one of the things that stops it, though, or hampers the amplification of this process is the mainstream media. Now, we know the media is owned by a consortium of, a few particular individuals, and I really believe if we took back our media and made it more honest and just and transparent, then we might be able to help people get on board with this new understanding, both professionals and laymen alike. So is there anywhere in quantum economics where you look at how the way information is disseminated to the masses?
Well, as soon as we realize that information is secondary to meaning, then the dissemination of information to masses will also automatically improve, because everybody who disseminates information, like the media and the experts, knowledge experts that we have, commentators, all of them have to serve meaning instead of just serve information on the plate. So, the recognition that meaning is important, recognition that value is important, that recognition that the worldview is there, which re-justifies all these things, all these human qualities, in fact, says that the making this human potentiality into actuality in ourselves, or in other words, embody meaning and values in ourselves, is the goal of human life, that human life have purpose, that our mythologies are telling us about the purpose of human life. Mythologies like Hero's Journey, they are not just stories, but they are really ways to live. As soon as these things become very clear to what needs to be disseminated, I think that all systems of dissemination will change, and people will start doing things the right way. After all, don't forget that just 100 years ago, how much change in civilization we made in the previous 200 years. I mean, it basically sort of started with Copernicus and Galileo, was slow initially, but then in the 18th century, with the coming of the Industrial Revolution, and with these three great institutions of human beings, capitalism, democracy, and liberal education, don't forget how quickly, just in a matter of 200 years, how much civilization we created compared to the olden days, which agreed, has given us tremendously good ideas, great arts, and of course the great mystical ideas and understanding of consciousness, agreed. But still, we made really earth-shattering progress in civilization in just 200 years compared to 2,000 years that went before. So this is to the credit of modern science. And so I like to call the new philosophy quantum worldview, not only monistic idealism, that's one way of putting it, but really the label I would like to give is it's just integrative or integral modernism. Because the word modern is important. The coming of science is a very important event in human civilization. So I think it is very fitting that the new science integrates the old with the new, because the new was also as important as the old has been.
All right. That is, I guess, this process of evolution, the evolution of consciousness, the evolution of human consciousness, and the evolution of our philosophies and social systems that need to grow to reflect these new understandings. I guess this new, it's like a pivotal era in human history where these two worlds are meeting squarely in the middle and shaking hands and becoming mates again for the first time. So it's going to take a little time, and slowly but surely we'll see more people waking up to these sorts of ideas and connecting their hearts to these sorts of feelings around moving forward collectively in a healthy, happy, and honourable way. Right.
And we should not be too impatient. It should it should take a little time, because if we give it time, then we'll do it right. Doing it hastily always will leave something behind and not include something. This is a very all-inclusive philosophy that is developing, a philosophy that will really include everything. And, inclusivity is so much better than exclusivity. Exclusivity generates separateness and hate. Inclusivity generates love, meaning, and purpose in our life. We should never forget that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. You're coming to Australia in December, you mentioned prior to this discussion?
Yes, I am coming to this in December as planned. It's not completely confirmed yet, but almost. And the plan is to come to give a 4-day quantum activism workshop, December 3, 4, 5, 6, Thursday through Sunday. And it will be in Melbourne. It is being hosted by Will Hamilton, a businessman of high repute in Melbourne, I presume. And the information details will all be on my website, amitgoswami.org, amitgoswami.org. My website, as soon as the event is confirmed, will advertise this with all the details. But it will be in Melbourne, and the dates are December 3 to 6.
Well, I've never had a discussion so robust in terms of bringing the mind of spirituality, not just into the realm of the material realm, that scientific rational realm, but also the realm of our social systems. So it was an absolute pleasure, and thank you for joining me, Dr. Goswami.
Thank you for having me, Phil. It was a great hour.